Somewhere in Siberia, roughly 15,000 years ago, a wolf made a decision that would end its kind. Not through extinction, not through fire or flood or the slow grinding of an ice age. It ended them the way all great endings happen, quietly, without ceremony, without a single moment where anything felt final. The wolf walked toward the fire, and that, in a way, was the last truly wolf thing it ever did. We talk about dogs like they're a gift, a triumph of nature and friendship. We say things like man's best friend as if the relationship were mutual from the start. As if somewhere in the ancient dark, a wolf looked at a human and thought, yes, this is what I want to be. But that's not the story. That's the comfortable version, the version that lets us feel good about what we did. The real story is quieter and harder to sit with. To understand what happened, you have to understand what a wolf actually is. A wolf is not simply a large dog. It is something more particular than that. A mind built for distance, for silence, for the kind of intelligence that only develops when survival depends on reading a landscape, tracking prey across 30 miles, holding a hierarchy with nothing but body language and restraint. Wolves are extraordinarily good at watching other wolves. That's the key. Their social intelligence is tuned almost exclusively to their own kind. When researchers test modern wolves, raised in captivity, socialized with humans, the wolves still struggle to follow a human pointing at something. They look at the hand, they look at the face, they don't make the connection. Dogs do this instantly. Even puppies who have never been trained. That difference, that one small, almost invisible difference, is the entire distance between a wolf and a dog, and it took thousands of years of pressure and loss to carve it. Here's what we believe happened, though believe is doing real work in that sentence because we were not there. Around the end of the last ice age, humans were not the apex predators they would later become. They were somewhere in the middle, smart, social, dangerous in groups, but still subject to the same hungers that governed everything else. And wolves, for their part, were drawn to human campsites the way they were drawn to anything that smelled like food. The wolves who were least afraid of humans were the ones who got closest, and proximity over generations meant something. The humans who didn't kill those wolves, whether out of curiosity or usefulness or something softer, were the ones who began slowly to share space with them. This was not a plan. No one sat down and said, let us create a new animal. It was just tolerance. And tolerance, repeated across enough generations, is the most powerful force in biology. In 2005, a team of researchers published findings from a 40-year experiment in Siberia. The Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belyaev had begun selectively breeding silver foxes in 1959, choosing generation after generation only the foxes that showed the least fear toward humans. Within 6 generations, the foxes were approaching humans voluntarily. Within 10, they were wagging their tails. Within 40 years, an eye blink in evolutionary time, they looked different. Floppy ears, spotted coats, shorter snouts, curling tails, the physical markers we associate with domestic dogs had appeared on their own as a byproduct of selecting for one single trait, tolerance of humans. No one bred for floppy ears. The floppy ears came free, attached to something invisible. What Belyaev had stumbled onto, and what the wolves stumbled into thousands of years before him, is that domestication is not a menu. You don't pick the traits you want and leave the rest. When you select for tameness, you get the whole package. The body changes with the mind. The stress hormones drop. The social behavior rewires. The animal that emerges is genuinely new. It cannot be undone. The dog that exists today is not a tame wolf. This is the part that matters. This is the part we get wrong. A dog is something that cannot become a wolf again, even if we tried. The neural pathways that make a dog, the ones oriented toward human faces, human voices, human approval, those pathways replace something. They grew in the space where wolf thinking used to live. Dogs are worse at solving problems alone than wolves are. Wolves, when presented with a puzzle, will work at it independently until they crack it. Dogs, when presented with the same puzzle, try for a moment and then look at a human. They outsource. They have learned, somewhere deep in their inheritance, that the human is the answer. And for 10,000 years, they were right. But that's the cost. The dog's genius is its connection to us. And to build that connection, something else had to go. The wolf's genius, its self-sufficiency, its directional intelligence, its belonging to the open world, that was the price. There's a moment in the development of a dog's brain that I find almost unbearable to think about. At around 2 weeks old, wolf pups and dog pups are nearly identical in their fear responses. They startle, they retreat, they are wary. But around 3 to 4 weeks, wolf pups begin to develop a much stronger fear of the unfamiliar, the thing that will eventually make them unsuitable for domestication. Their caution deepens into something hardened. Dog pups at the same age go the other way. Their fear response stays low. Their window of socialization stays open longer. They remain, in some deep neurological sense, younger, more permeable, more willing to trust. The dog, in other words, is a wolf that never fully grew up. We gave them permanent puppyhood. We gave them a world where they would never need the full weight of what they were, and they flourished. There is no question of that. They flourished enormously. But I keep thinking about the wolf pup at 4 weeks whose fear starts to sharpen, who begins to understand that the world is vast and indifferent and must be read carefully, who grows into the animal it was always going to be. That pup grew into something magnificent. We just didn't keep those ones. There are wolves in the world today, real ones, the kind that have not been softened by proximity to our fires. And when researchers observe them, what they find is not savagery, not chaos. What they find is structure, memory, grief, long relationships between individuals who know each other deeply over years. They play, they mourn, they remember. The wolf is not a dog waiting to be improved. The wolf is a complete thing. I have a dog. She sleeps at the foot of my bed. In the morning, before I've said a word, before I've moved, she already knows I'm awake. She watches my face for information the way her ancestors watched the landscape. She is reading me, constantly, fluently, in a language built over 15,000 years of proximity to creatures like me. And sometimes I look at her, at this perfect, gentle, trusting thing, and I think about what she came from, what she descended from, what was traded slowly and without consent for the warmth of this room and the safety of this life. And I wonder if the wolf, somewhere in that ancient Siberian dark, would have chosen differently, if it had known what choosing meant.